The stars had always been a source of wonder for humanity. Generations before, people would gaze up at the night sky, tracing constellations and imagining distant worlds filled with mystery and possibility. But the time for dreaming was over. Earth, the only home humanity had ever known, was dying. Overpopulation, environmental collapse, and centuries of resource exploitation had pushed the planet to its breaking point. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't just looking to the stars for answers. They were depending on them for survival. It started as an ambitious idea, a spacecraft unlike anything ever built before. A vessel so massive, so advanced, it could sustain life for decades, even centuries. It wasn't just a ship, it was a lifeboat. The Ark scientists and engineers from every corner of the globe worked together to bring it to life. The Ark was a marvel of human ingenuity, a testament to what could be achieved when the world united for a common cause. It was over 10 kilometers long, housing not just the latest in space travel technology, but entire ecosystems, schools, medical facilities, and living spaces for over 10,000 people. It was humanity's last, best hope. The day of the launch was bittersweet. Crowds gathered on every continent to watch the Ark lift off, the massive engines igniting with a roar that echoed across the skies. On board were the best and brightest, scientists, engineers, artists, explorers, and families selected through a rigorous process. The weight of their mission was clear. They weren't just leaving Earth to explore. They were tasked with finding a new home, a place where humanity could begin again. Among the passengers was Dr. Elara Voss, a biologist who had spent her career studying how life adapted to extreme conditions. She had been one of the key designers of the Ark's life support systems, ensuring that plants could grow in artificial environments and that the air and water would remain pure. Elara wasn't just a scientist, she was a dreamer. But as she looked out the observation window, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance, her dreams felt heavier than she had ever imagined. Captain Riker, the commanding officer of the Ark, stood on the bridge, his sharp eyes scanning the endless sea of stars. A decorated military leader, Riker had been chosen for his steady hand and unshakable resolve. But even he couldn't help the knot in his stomach as the reality of their journey set in. The Ark was more than a ship. It was a fragile bubble of life in an otherwise hostile universe. Keeping it safe was his responsibility, and he wasn't one to take responsibility lightly. The ship's journey began smoothly, the vastness of space enveloping the Ark as it traveled farther from Earth than any human had before. Inside, the passengers adjusted to their new reality. Children played in zero gravity, laughing as they tumbled through the air. Scientists conducted experiments, eager to unlock the mysteries of space. Engineers worked tirelessly to maintain the ship's systems, ensuring that everything ran as it should. The hum of the Ark's engines was a constant reminder of the fragile line between survival and disaster. But even in the excitement of discovery, there was an undercurrent of unease. The Ark was too quiet, too perfect. The vast corridors and endless compartments created a strange sense of isolation. And then there were the anomalies. Small things at first, unaccounted for energy fluctuations, supplies that didn't match the inventory, faint noises in the maintenance tunnels. None of it seemed connected, but together, it painted a picture that no one wanted to acknowledge. Elara noticed it in the data first. Subtle shifts in oxygen levels, water usage slightly higher than projected, and tiny variations in the ship's temperature. At first, she thought it was a software glitch, but the patterns were too deliberate. When she brought it to Captain Riker's attention, he dismissed it as a minor system calibration issue. But as the anomalies continued, even Riker couldn't deny that something was wrong. Late one night, as the ship's artificial day cycle dimmed, Elara found herself in the observation deck, staring into the vast emptiness of space. The stars seemed to stretch forever, their cold light offering little comfort. She wasn't alone. Ethan, one of her lab assistants, joined her, his usually bright demeanor replaced by quiet concern. "Do you ever feel like we're being watched?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elara turned to him, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't know. It's just, sometimes I hear things. Footsteps when no one's there. Doors opening and closing on their own. And the missing supplies, what if someone or something is on board?" Ilara wanted to dismiss his fears, to tell him it was just his imagination. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that he might be right. Meanwhile, in the lower decks, Lieutenant Amir Cade led a security sweep. The missing supplies had escalated from an annoyance to a potential threat. Amir, a former military officer, prided himself on his ability to stay calm under pressure. But even he felt a chill as he navigated the dark, narrow maintenance tunnels. His team had found no evidence of tampering, no signs of an intruder. Yet the anomalies persisted. Sector 12 clear, one of his guards reported over the comms. Copy that, Amir replied, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. As the Ark continued its journey, the tension grew. The passengers whispered about sabotage, ghosts, or even aliens. The crew worked tirelessly to maintain order, but the cracks in their confidence were beginning to show. And then, one fateful night, everything changed. The lights flickered throughout the ship, plunging entire sectors into darkness for several seconds before the emergency systems restored power. Ilara's communicator buzzed urgently, and she raced to the control room, where Riker and Amir were already gathered. The room was filled with the hum of alarms and the frantic voices of technicians. What happened? Ilara demanded, her heart pounding. Power surge, Riker said, his jaw tight. Sage is still analyzing the cause. The ship's AI, Sage, spoke up, its calm, measured voice cutting through the chaos. Preliminary analysis indicates a disruption in the fusion core's energy output. Cause unknown. Unknown? Amir repeated, his tone sharp. How can it be unknown? The core is supposed to be fail-proof. Ilara's mind raced. If the fusion core failed, the Ark would lose power and life support. Everyone on board would be doomed. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered again, and a low, rhythmic tapping echoed through the room. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it sent a shiver down Ilara's spine. "What is that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The tapping grew louder, more deliberate, as if something or someone was moving through the ship's walls. The crew froze, their eyes darting around the room, fear etched on their faces. Riker stood, his expression grim. "Amir, take your team and find out where that's coming from. Ilara, stay here and monitor the systems. I'll be on the bridge." As Amir and his team moved out, their flashlights cutting through the dimly lit corridors, Ilara stared at the monitors, her pulse racing. The tapping continued, growing fainter as if retreating into the ship's endless labyrinth. For the first time since the journey began, Ilara felt a deep, bone-chilling fear. The Ark was humanity's greatest achievement, a beacon of hope in a desperate time. But now it felt like a trap, a fragile bubble drifting through an unforgiving void, hiding secrets that no one could explain. And as the tapping finally stopped, leaving only silence, one thing was certain. They were no longer alone. Amir moved cautiously down the narrow corridors, his team close behind him. The sound of their boots against the metal floor echoed faintly, mingling with the ever-present hum of the Ark's life systems. Each step felt heavier than the last as the silence around them grew more oppressive. The faint tapping sound that had rattled the crew moments ago was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. One of the security officers, a young recruit named Jensen, glanced nervously at Amir. "Do you think it's a mechanical issue?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Amir didn't answer right away. He didn't want to admit that he had no idea what they were dealing with. He just nodded, keeping his flashlight trained on the path ahead. They reached a junction in the maintenance tunnels where several conduits converged. It was dark, the emergency lighting casting long shadows that flickered unnaturally with every movement. "Thermal scans," Amir ordered, his voice firm but low. Jensen pulled out his handheld scanner and swept it across the area. The device beeped softly, showing normal temperature readings. No signs of life, no heat signatures that shouldn't have been there. "Clear," Jensen reported, though his voice betrayed his unease. Amir nodded again, but his gut told him something wasn't right. He gestured for the team to spread out and search the area. They moved methodically, checking behind panels and inside storage compartments, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. In the control room, Ilara was glued to her station, monitoring the ship's systems with meticulous focus. Sage, the ship's AI, provided regular updates, but none of them were comforting. The fusion core's fluctuations continued, and there were still no explanations for the anomalies. "Sage, what are the odds of this being a system malfunction?" Ilara asked, her voice tight with frustration. "Current data suggests a less than 5% probability of a system error," Sage replied. "The disruptions appear to be externally influenced." Externally influenced. The words sent a shiver down Ilara's spine. She leaned closer to the monitor, studying the data again. It didn't make sense. The Ark was supposed to be a sealed environment, completely self-contained. There was no outside influence that could interfere with its systems. On the bridge, Captain Riker paced back and forth, his mind racing. He could feel the tension among his crew, even as they tried to maintain their professionalism. The whispers among the passengers were growing louder, and it wouldn't be long before fear turned into chaos. "Captain," one of the communications officers called out, "we're getting intermittent interference on the external sensors. It's faint, but it's there." Riker stopped in his tracks and turned to the officer. "What kind of interference?" "Unknown, sir. It's not a signal we've encountered before. It doesn't match any known patterns or frequencies." Riker frowned. The Ark was traveling through uncharted space, far from any known celestial objects or communication networks. If there was interference, it could only mean one thing: something was out there. Meanwhile, deep in the lower decks, Amir and his team reached the end of their search. They hadn't found anything out of the ordinary, but the tension in the air was palpable. Jensen shifted nervously, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. "Sir, are we sure there's nothing here?" he asked. Before Amir could answer, the faint tapping sound returned. It was rhythmic and deliberate, echoing faintly through the tunnels. The team froze, their flashlights darting in every direction. "It's coming from below us," one of the officers whispered. Amir's heart pounded in his chest. He motioned for the team to follow as he led them down a narrow stairwell to the lower maintenance level. The sound grew louder as they descended, and for the first time, Amir could make out a strange, almost metallic quality to it. When they reached the bottom, they'd found themselves in a wide chamber filled with pipes and conduits. The air was colder here, and there was a faint, acrid smell that Amir couldn't place. He raised his flashlight, scanning the room. "Stay alert," he said quietly, his hand resting on the sidearm at his hip. The tapping stopped abruptly, plunging the room into an oppressive silence. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Jensen's scanner beeped again, showing a faint heat signature just ahead. "There," Jensen whispered, pointing toward a cluster of pipes. Amir motioned for the team to fan out and approach slowly. As they closed in, the air seemed to grow heavier, the silence pressing down on them like a weight. Amir's flashlight caught a glint of movement, a small, shadowy figure darting between the pipes. "Stop!" Amir called out, his voice firm. The figure froze, and for a moment there was only silence. Then, slowly, it stepped into the light. It was a child. A girl, no older than 8, her clothes tattered and her face pale with fear. She clutched a small, makeshift bag to her chest and stared at the team with wide, frightened eyes. "Who are you?" Amir asked, lowering his weapon slightly. The girl didn't respond. She just looked at him, her lips trembling. Amir knelt, trying to make himself less intimidating. "It's okay. You're safe now. Can you tell us your name?" The girl hesitated before whispering Lena. "How did you get here, Lena?" Amir asked gently. I don't know," she said, her voice barely audible. "I just woke up here." Amir exchanged a glance with Jensen, who looked as confused as he felt. A stowaway? It didn't make sense. The Ark's boarding protocols were airtight, and every passenger and crew member was accounted for. "We need to get her to the med bay," Amir said, standing and motioning for the team to escort Lena back to the upper levels. As they made their way out of the maintenance tunnels, Lena clung to Amir's arm, her small frame trembling with each step. Amir couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story than she was letting on. Back in the control room, Ilara received the news about Lena with a mix of relief and confusion. The discovery of a child raised more questions than it answered. Who was she? How did she get on board? And why was she hiding? As Ilara prepared to meet Amir and Lena in the med bay, another alert flashed on her monitor. Unexplained energy surge detected in Sector 19. Investigate immediately. Ilara's heart sank. Whatever was happening on the Ark, it was far from over.